Peace and grace, peace and grace. Thank God for another day and opportunity to minister his word. Thank God for the ears and the souls that can hear my voice. Thank God for the ones that will hear it later. And thank God that the Almighty Christ does save. Faith in the midst of a storm. So the motivation for this study came from the hurricane that we just dealt with here in Florida. It's one of those things, right, where I really wanted to attack this subject of having faith in hard times, right? And I wanted to use a couple of examples out the Bible to support this, to definitely support this. So this is the thing, right? I'm going to try to paint this picture of the situation for anybody that may not be from Florida and never dealt with this type of situation, right? This is what it is. You hear about this storm coming, this dangerous storm, and it's being talked about all day long on the news, right? Coworkers talking about it, friends talking about it, families talking about it, right? You can look in the face of some individuals and you can see that there's genuine fear there, right? There's concern there with some people, and you know, and there should be concern there because these are not small matters, right? When you get in your vehicle and you ride out in the streets, and you go to grocery stores, you'll see the water's gone. The shelves are empty. Barely any groceries. Canned goods are gone, right? You go to the gas stations. The line for gas is just way down the street. If you're trying to get gas, you may have to wait hours to get gas in line. People arguing and fighting over gas, right? Gas at this time is it's such in high demand at this time, right? Then you have individuals packing, loading their stuff. They're leaving the state. You look outside, you see people boarding up windows. So you see all of this stuff going on, and to the eye, it can be very concerning, right? Some may even be in fear, right? But we have to keep this in mind. In the book of Hebrews 11, right? And it talks about faith. Let me just go to it real quick because I don't want to even misquote it. It's a very simple verse, but it's so true. It say, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? So you see all of this that's going on, but your faith has to be the total opposite of what you see. Right. Another thing that may be going on is there's going to be multiple prayers being sent out. You're going to have people praying that God make the storm shift. You're going to have people praying that the storm never comes this way, that it just dies in the sea. All of these things are going to be going on. Right. And I even had a question, which was a great question. And the person said, hey, well, if we're praying that the storm shift and then you got them over there praying that the storm shift, who does God honor in that prayer? And does it mean that this group of people prayer was stronger than that group of people prayer because that prayer got honored over that honor? Which is a great question, right? So with that being said, all of this is going on. You're going to hear the negativity, the negative talk. I heard so much negative talk. I heard people making claims about things that were going to happen. And the storm hadn't even made land yet. And you'll hear people saying, oh, we're going to have this happen. Oh, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be this. All of which could be true, but your faith has to be bigger than that. You understand what I'm saying? Like, for example, we know that this can be a dangerous matter. We know this, but you have to have faith that God protects you through the situation. Like, often people pray that God removes a situation, but we need to start making prayers that God give us the strength to get through the situation. Right. There's a difference. Right. He can give us the faith to get through the situation. When you look in his word, right, you see, and I'm not going to make this too long. This is just something I wanted to drop. You see tons of individuals that knew something was coming, but they had faith that God would protect them. One person that is great to use for an example is Noah. See, God and Noah in Genesis chapter 6, God told Noah what was going to happen before it happened. He told him, he gave him the warning. He said, I'm about to destroy all mankind in the earth. But for you, build this ark and take your family and these animals in there. And when you do these things, you'll be protected. And by faith, Noah did that. He believed that. And because of that, he was saved. You understand what I'm saying? He was in the exact word that the scriptures use in Genesis is that what God showed grace. Noah found grace. Living on a world full of wickedness. But Noah was able to find grace. Look at this right here. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of this earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and fowls of the air, for it had repented me that I have made them. Verse 8, but Noah found grace in his eyes, in the eyes of the Lord. So Noah found this grace. So Noah, knowing that the flood coming, he's knowing that the storm is coming, but he found grace and God protected him and saved him. Right. And he didn't perish with everybody else. Another example you want to look at is the Passover. Right. He gave them the warning in Exodus 12. Take the blood of the lamb and put it upon the doorposts, and I will skip past your home. That was the type of faith that they had. If I follow these orders and do these directions, it's coming. But I'm going to have faith that God is going to protect me by being obedient and putting the blood of the lamb on the doorpost. That blood of the lamb on the doorpost is real. Is John 1:29. Behold, when Christ came, behold, the Lamb of God that take away sins. Right. His blood protecting us from our sins. Very similar thing, right? So these individuals knew something was coming, but they still had the faith that God would protect them and watch over them. I'm gonna give you another example. When you look in Joshua. Matter of fact, look at this right here. Hebrews 11:31. By faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believe not, when she had received the spies with peace. Now you look in the book of Joshua, right? You know, Rahab, she was of another nation, right? And she was a harlot. Them two strikes against the Most High at that time. I mean, the harlot thing still a strike, but the other nation today, we know that's neither Jew nor Greek. But, you know, she was other nation and she was a harlot, right? The two spies that she hid, you could read this in Joshua chapter 2. She hid the two spies that came from Israel to spy out the land. God had given them this land, right? She knew who these individuals were because their names and Israel's name started raining terror upon all the nations because they all heard about what God did with Moses in the Red Sea. She tells them in Joshua, we heard about you. We knew that God dried up the Red Sea for you all. And there's been great fear upon all men because of this, right? She told them their confidence and everything was stripped. But she hid these spies, and they told her when she left that if you hang this out of your window, that we won't come back and destroy you and your loved ones and your family like we're going to do to everybody else because of this deed that you've done for us, right? So she followed the instructions, right? And when they came and did what they did to the land and the individuals that were there, she was saved. She didn't get the punishment that everybody else got because of her obedience. Now, I'm going to use these three situations for an example. And me and my daughter was talking about this. When you're in your home and you hear a hurricane going on outside, you hear the wind blowing, the whistling of the wind, the trees, you may hear stuff crashing down out there. But your faith has to be strong and have to be, God, protect me and my loved ones and my family in this situation, right? I'm quite sure that the Israelites heard a lot of screaming and yelling and things of that nature when God passed through and destroyed all of the Egyptians that didn't have the blood over the doorpost. I'm quite sure Noah may have heard some things outside of that ark when he was inside of that ark, right? I'm quite sure Rahab heard some screaming and some yelling when the Israelites came to take over that land while her and her family was in there with them doors shut, right? But they felt that they were going to be safe because of their faith and the order in which they did things. Now I want to go to another story real quick, and I want to show you this. And this is a real king story that we heard growing up as kids. But for me, this story is so heavy because the faith that these men had is like, wow. And that's the captivity in Babylon with Israel, right? When you got King Nebuchadnezzar and he builds this image. This is in Daniel chapter 3. He builds this image and he wants everybody to bow down and worship this image. And his warning was whoever didn't do so would be tossed in the fire. Whoever didn't do so would be tossed in the fire. But you have these three men. You have these three bold men of God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they refused to do so because they served the Most High. They served the God, the possessor of heaven and earth that Genesis 14 talk about. They served that God, the only one true God, the God Almighty. And they refused to bow down to his golden image and worship these things. And the king got very upset about this. He got very upset with this, right? And because they didn't do this, he told, matter of fact, let me show you this. I'm going to go to, so in Daniel 3:19, right? He tells them to heat the furnace up 7 times more. He wanted it hotter than what it was. Heat it up 7 times more. So let's go to Daniel 3:22. Look at this. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceeding hot, the flames of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Down to verse 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. The princes and governors of the captains of the king's counselors being gathered together saw these men upon those bodies. The fire had no power, nor was the hair on their head. So they were in this fire, and it said nothing touched them, basically. The hair on their head was still good. It said their coats were not changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who have sent his angel and delivered his servants. Look at this. Delivered his servants that trusted in him and have changed the king's word and yield their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which spake anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. So their faith, they trusted in God. They believed in God. They knew they were going into that fire because it was told to them. That's some amazing faith right there. That's some different type of faith. I'm gonna be honest. That's amazing. But they still had that faith that they were going to be protected, right? So I use these examples to motivate us to understand this, that, just because you make a prayer sometimes and that prayer might not get answered doesn't mean that God has necessarily turned his eyes and his ears from you, right? Sometimes you go into a situation and you come out of it stronger than what you were before you went into it, right? I'm gonna be honest, like when this whole situation was going on with this storm thing, I heard a lot of negative talk. Did I make prayers about the storm? Of course I did. I made prayers that God kill it in the water. But then the more and more I heard people speak around me, the negative, like just the negative talk that I heard, the more and more of it, I realized like, man, where's the faith? Where's the faith of everybody? So then naturally, yes, my prayer changed. My prayer went from God. It's coming. I could see it's coming. We one day away now. It's coming. So Lord, protect me and my family the same way you protected Noah during the flood. Protect us the same way Rahab was protected when Israel took over their land. Protect us the same way that the 3 young men in the book of Daniel was protected when they was threw into the furnace that was 7 times hotter than what it was before. Protect us in that manner. That's the prayers, right? Have that faith. Just because you see a storm coming in, like I said, with this situation, it's a literal storm, but it could be any situation, infirmity to the flesh. It could be anything. You know, we go through trials and tribulations in life, but we have to have that faith that God is going to protect us through it all. Like, as I say, with this situation, I'm talking about a physical storm, but this same thing can apply to anything. It can apply to your marriage. It can apply to your job search. It can apply to your if your body is going through, again, physical infirmities. It can apply to all of that. Don't go by what you see. Go by what you're praying and you're believing on. Right? That's what you go by. And you stick with that to the grave. Because even if the reward doesn't come here on this earth, greatly shall we be rewarded in the afterlife when we are resurrected and we get those spiritual blessings and them gifts. Right? That's the mentality that we have to have. OK, so, yeah, with that being said, I just wanted to just put that small message out. Wasn't nothing too heavy, too big. Just something that I just wanted us to understand about keeping faith in the midst of the storm and understanding that, you know, don't go by what we see. Don't go by the talks of other people. Because other people can be discouraged and other people can have lack of faith. Right. We have to go by what we've read and we understand that God has done for people in that word and what we know he's capable of doing. Right. We don't deny the power of God ever. All right. So with that being said, we want to thank God for the ears and the souls that was able to hear my voice. Thank God for the ones that will hear it later. And most importantly, we want to thank God that the Almighty Christ does save. Till the next time, peace and grace.